Hello Internet, and welcome to a new tutorial. I'm in this phase of my life where I'm really nostalgic to the 90s and early 2000s, yet I embrace the era we live in from a music production point of view. Like, sometimes I wish I was there in the 90s making music on all of these old hardwares and creating, first psychedelic trance tracks and, trance tracks in general. And this desire actually got me searching all over the internet about how they made these tracks and what equipments they've actually used. And then I stumbled upon this comment from Simon Posfrod where he said, and I quote, "The truth is I only need an SH-101, a delay, and a spring reverb to be creatively fulfilled, possibly for the rest of my life." The SH-101 part got my full attention. I mean, this synthesizer is extremely limited, yet it's loved by everyone, and I just can't understand why. So I've decided to go on a quest to discover what this synthesizer is capable of, and spoiler alert, I'm now pretty much hooked on it. So in this tutorial, I want to talk to you about this synthesizer, why I think it's awesome, and how I've changed the way I look at it to realize how awesome it is. But before we dive into this tutorial, if you'd like to support the channel, you can consider becoming one of my Patreon, buy my presets on Gumroad, or just leave a like, comment, subscribe. Things like that helps the channel a lot. Content like this is posted every week and special content for my patrons. Oh, and by the way, I've just launched my Discord channel where I'm going to be passing more time over there. So yeah, if you want to come and hang, talk some music, talk some synthesizers, or just talk about life in general, there's a link down in the description. So for my quest, I've ended up using the Tal-Bassline101. It seems to be one of the best options out there. Like, functionality-wise, it looks true to the original, but with some added modern touch. Like, you have a more powerful sequencer, oscillator, filter, FM, some polyphony, which doesn't really matter for me. I mean, it doesn't seem like they took the original soul of the synthesizer from it. It's just like an added modern touch, like you'd expect the synthesizer right now, like to, for example, to have a synced LFO. So yeah, you got that. Like, it doesn't really change the soul of the synthesizer for me. You can just bypass all of these options and use the synthesizer like you were making music in the 90s, So no problem with that. As for the sound, I've never had an SH-101, I've never used one, so I can't really tell, but thanks to Dash Glitch's last video, it came out like a couple of weeks ago, where he compared his own Roland SH-101 with the soft chip emulation. And actually I got a decent insight of how the oscillators should behave and should sound and what the waveform looks like. And actually comparing Dash's results with the Tal-Bassline101, we can see that the Tal-Bassline is really close to the original, so I think that's a really good point. For sure, I'll leave you to check that video out. I'll leave a link down in the description, and you can compare it to your Tal-Bassline101. And also, one really good point about the Tal-Bassline101 is it's pretty accessible in terms of price, which gives it like a +1 for me. So now, enough with the talking, let's take a look at the synthesizer and let me show you why I think it's awesome. So here's the Tal-Bassline101. It pretty much looks like the original, so really brief overview. We have the single modulator, basically LFO in here with 4 different shapes. Then we have the simple VCO that comes with it, with its 3 main outputs. Basically, we have a saw, square, and the sub oscillator, and you can just mix these waveforms together. The sub oscillator is just like the original, comes with 3 options: 1 octave lower, 2 octave lowers, and 2 octaves lowers with a thinner square. Noise generator, filter, the 24 decibel per octave filters that I've really underestimated. Like, I've started making music in the VST era, okay? Like, I remember I had Silent 1, and it had all of these nice options: low pass, high pass, band pass, 12, 24 decibel per octave. So for me, the idea of just having a 24 decibel per octave low pass filter seemed ridiculous. I was like, why? I mean, it's so limited. But I'll show you in a few what it's capable of doing and why I was like, okay, respect, So next we have VCA that can be controlled as a gate on and off or with the envelope, which is a single envelope, really basic ADSR, that can be triggered with the gate and the trig, or just the gate or the LFO. For me, like triggering the envelope with an LFO is a little bit weird for me. Like I didn't find a useful way of using it, but if you know one, please leave a comment down. Anyways, the features that they've added. So the first obvious one is the syncable LFO, which can be triggered. So the cycle will be restarted every time you hit a new note, which is really nice. And you can invert the LFO if you want to invert the modulation. Next one is the snap to note on the mod, VCO mod in here. So what this will do will basically quantize the modulation from the LFO to the VCO. And with it, we can actually, instead of like going in between the notes, we can hit the precise note, and we can actually use this to create like some sort of a fake ARP, if that makes sense. So for instance, if I'll set the LFO to square, so we'll have this really simple modulation with a saw wave. So now we're going in between the notes. And now when I'll set snap to note, we'll be perfectly in pitch. So now we can create something like this. Sure, we can trigger the LFO, and we can set the LFO to trigger the envelope, which will trigger the VCA, and now we can get something a bit more musical. So not the best of ARPs, but you get the point. I think this is a really nice touch to have, but we can bypass it. Now moving on, we have the oscillator to filter FM. And I think this is like, this opens up the palette of sound that you can get out of this little beast. Because now we can create these type of tones with the synthesizer with ease. So I'll take off the saw in here, and I'll crank the resonance all the way up till the filter starts self-resonating. So now we have this, okay? And I can set the saw, or you know what, the square, to modulate the filter frequency with this slide in here. So now we have this. Let me take off this modulation. Now we have this. Very nice, right? And now we can use the LFO, which I will sync to, let's say, 1/8, to modulate the filter's cutoff point to get these type of sounds. We can also, for the lovers of analog drums, we can create these really nice snares now with it, and percussions thanks to the noise modulating the filter's frequency. So if I'll set the noise and a really plucky envelope, we can create this type of sounds. And since they've added the option to have white noise, we can get another flavor of this modulation, like so. And, you know, if we're going to stay true to the original, and I really insist that you take the synthesizer and try to make a track out of it, you'll see how this option can change the whole path of the track that you're making, because now we can get like even more sounds out of this synthesizer. And I think this is a really nice exercise to do, by the way. Actually, I've done it for this tutorial, and we're going to hear this track at the end, this little jam. But for now, let's stay with the synthesizer. Now, moving on to the filter, they've added the volume compensation in here, because when we crank the resonance, we will lose a little bit of volume, so this will compensate for the loss of volume. Actually, this filter sounds so good. Like, literally, I've underestimated what you can do. Check this out. So let's set the envelope. Yeah, let's just set the VCA to gate. Now we have this. Let's crank the resonance all the way up. No, not all the way up. Now with the volume compensation, it's compensated this loss that we got with the resonance. And by the way, this quirky, squelchy character to the filter is so good. Now, let's take the oscillator one octave lower. Now we have this. And actually we can use the sub oscillator now to get like even a nicer tone. Check this out. Let's take it 2 octaves down. This tone is so good. Let's add a delay in here. 1/8 dotted from Makeup Boy as the usual. And the nice thing in here is that now we can modulate the frequency of the filter either with the sub oscillator or with the modulator. I'm going to choose the modulator, I'll unsync it. Now we get something like this. Sounds from outer space, like analog sounds from outer space. I really love this, and I've really never thought that this synthesizer is capable of doing these goodies. Now, the next thing that they've added is the full envelope range. So the full envelope range will extend the range of how the envelope modulating the filter, basically opening and closing the filter. And this actually comes really in handy if we try to make a kick with the filter. So this is a really old school trick of making a kick where it doesn't involve any oscillator. We can just take off everything, leave the filter in here self-resonating. Okay, let's take off the delay for sure. And now I'll leave the volume compensation on, and check this out. If I'll take a really plucky envelope, I'll set it to the VCA2, we will create a really simple kick. But let's say we're not modulating enough, like it's not getting as clicky or not as in the high end as you wished to be. We can set the full range envelope. Now we have this. And now we just got a laser kick, you know, right out of the box. As for the VCA, they didn't add anything. And as for the envelope, they just added a declick. Attack and the release. It's really nice for some plucky sounds where you start hearing the clickiness of the envelope. You just turn it on and it'll declick it. It'll just smoothen up the release and the attack stages. Now, they've also added the velocity sensitivity in here because the original didn't react to velocity as far as I know. So I have velocity to envelope and velocity to volume. Pretty standard classic stuff we're used to right now. The Arpeggiator, I think they've done a really nice job with the Arpeggiator, and they've added a really powerful Arpeggiator that helped me a lot creating this track in here, or this jam. So the Arpeggiator, you can control the notes as you would suppose from any Arpeggiator. Oh, before I forget, we have up to 96 steps. The original had 100 steps, so yeah, 4 more. We can control the velocity and we can control the length. And actually, with this, we can create really nice grooves. So for instance, let me turn it on. Now we have this. Okay, not with the sub, with the saw. Take it off 1 octave higher. We have this. Okay, nothing too special, but if I'll just right-click in here, we can randomize the notes, the length, and the velocity. So now I can randomize the length, and we get this nice groove. I think this is really nice. And one really nice touch they've added to the Arpeggiator is the MIDI export in here. So basically, if you really like this pattern, you can drag and drop it in here, and you get the full pattern with the gate lengths and everything. And even like in here, you can add slides, so it'll render the slides out too. So that's really nice. Now, I really couldn't figure a better way of demonstrating what this synthesizer is capable of doing than by actually creating a track with it. So this is like a skeleton of a track, if that makes sense. Like it has all the main parts of it, and for sure all of the presets will be available for my Patreon, and also I'll provide samples from everything in here. And just to clarify some stuff, I'm only sending one legato note to the synth, and all of the melodies has been designed on the sequencer. Okay, not this one, but this one. All the melodies you hear are designed on the sequencer. I was really trying to be as close to the original as possible. So yeah, let's hear this little jam and see what this synthesizer is capable of doing. So yeah, one little amazing machine, extremely limited, pushes the creativity to another new level, and yet it sounds so good. I'm really stunned, by the things it can do. And yeah, with this is the end of this tutorial. I really hope you've liked it. Really hope you've learned something new. Have a great one.